I just start the recording also. Just give me a second.
Sure. Thank you, Atul.
Om, are you also recording on OBS? Because I'm not able to see the option anymore on.
Yes, Atul. I'm recording. Please continue. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So let's get started. I think we already kind of talked about the platform, so I'll skip that bit for today. And anyway, we might touch upon it when we get to the end of the seminar. So just quickly to introduce the guest, I would say today, not speaker, is Mr. Sridhar. He is the MD and co-founder at K Point Technologies. He's also co-founded GS Labs. He's been he has worked as chief operating officer at Persistent Systems for quite a while, and he's also been, I guess, working in the academic sphere for in the US for a while. So, like a very varied, from large organizations to startups to academics, right? A large variety of experience. So the format that we have today is slightly different from what we have been doing for the last few weeks. Instead of having a presentation and a webinar going, we will have more of a discussion around the topic of entrepreneurship and how do you start a business, whether it's a product organization, how do you, or a services organization, and how do you make that distinction, and how do you differentiate those kind of topics. So I would request people to it'd be good if more people are turning on their cameras, and I will get the ball rolling, but I would like people to maybe, if you can unmute yourself, ask questions, or if you can then, if you don't want to, then just type it out on the chat window and I can ask it for you too, Sridhar. So I think more people are joining in. I'll keep letting them in, but to just get started quickly. So, Sridhar, I guess to start off, right, I mean, it would help to get your perspective on what your journey has been so far. So, people get a baseline of where you're coming from and what you are, like thinking about and what your thoughts are in general. So, maybe if you could speak about your journey so far.
Sure. Atul, right?
Yes, Atul.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for calling me here. Ganesh, thanks for reaching out. I'm happy to help, That made a good English sentence.
Yes.
So you asked me about my journey, right? So maybe I should start at the beginning. Keep it very, very brief. So if you have more questions, please stop. So I'm, first of all, someone who's born in, at that time, a much smaller place called Nagpur. Now it's a big place. I am 59 years old. Spent 4 years in Nagpur. Born to a government servant who worked in the Department of Telecom at that time. And so he used to get transferred. And so I grew up in Nagpur. I grew up in Nashik, Amravati, again Nagpur. But once high school began, I was in Mumbai. And so a lot of my friend circle is from Mumbai. I've always been in a Marathi medium school, so I'm very happy about that. From my school in Dadar, Balmohan Vidya Mandir, I ended up going to IIT Bombay. And from there, after my degree in electrical engineering, I followed the herd, did a master's at Virginia Tech, then a PhD at North Carolina State, which was, the master's was in VLSI, the PhD was in computer networking, parallel processing. And then I picked up a professor's job at a university called the Naval Postgraduate School. And just as I was doing that, I got married to a girl from Pune, which is why I'm now in Pune. Which is why I would say we selected Pune to live in. So after 6 years of being a prof, we came back in 1995, and it was part of the plan we raised our families. So 2 kids were born while we were in the US. They are 30 and 29 years old now, boy and girl, Aditya and Rohini. So once we came back in 95, I was trying to figure out what I should do. The idea was to start a company and do something, which I did. But in that process, I met the guys at Persistent, and they offered to make me a equivalent of a founder partner. So I did that. I shelved my ambition of starting a company, and we grew Persistent, and I did that for 9 years, and left Persistent because I felt pretty strongly that I should start a business developing intellectual property and taking it out for the value of the IP. At that time, it was very abstract, and so I hooked up with my high school classmate Sunil Gaitonde, who's based in Chicago, and he was at a transition too. This was in 2003. So we started GS Lab, and GS Lab eventually produced a baby company called K Point. And so for some time we were doing two things in one day, GS Lab as well as K Point. And as both companies grew, then we made sure that one person, one job was one thing to do. And so Sunil and I decided to focus on K Point, and my other colleagues, Atul, Ajit, and Ajit, they are growing GS Lab, and so both companies are now prospering. I've been in Pune since 1995, so that's my brief history, work-wise.
Yeah, you did correct yourself and said that you had an option coming back to Pune rather than being forced by your wife. So
Yeah. So the big thing here is, it will come up later. It's some of the risks people's careers have are because the family is not aligned on what is to be done.
Right.
I was very fortunate that Gauri, my wife, wanted to live in Pune. I wanted to be back in India, and Pune was as good a choice as any other. And she wanted to be a homemaker by choice, and I was happy with that. So, it solved a lot of things for us.
right. So I think from what I gather, right. So you had an IP and then you kind of worked around it. So like for people who are trying to start off something, I guess my question really would be like, how do you kind of look at an idea? Maybe if they don't have an IP and just have a basic idea of something that they want to solve, like how do you kind of evaluate whether it is worthwhile, whether they should start at it? What would be your kind of advice around that?
Okay. Well, good question there, Atul. The thing is, an idea is only an idea, right? Until it starts to get executed and becomes of value to someone. And you don't know that beforehand. So one has to keep that in mind all the time. Before we hit on the concept of K Point, we had rejected 3 other ideas. And you do something, you get a feel for what it means. You talk to a lot of people. Don't remain too attached to your idea. Continuously evaluate yourself, and then take the right decision.
Right.
A lot of things depend on whether you can afford to do things in life. So that decided at GS Lab. What happened was we had developed a source of revenue, and so we could experiment, and that was very, very valuable for us. And we did that in a team. So it wasn't one person trying to say that, look, I know where the future lies and we'll go there. It was always a group of people who didn't just say yes to the others, but they contested. And that was very valuable.
Yeah, in fact, I think that brings us to a very good point about the people you partner with, right? And people like I have seen some startups which failed because like friends decided to partner, right? And then some which succeeded were completely two complete strangers had a shared idea and they worked. So, like, do you have like some insights into how to kind of set up that initial team where you like what are you looking for?
It's a very complex question, Atul, because one first of all has to be fortunate to get good people to work with. It doesn't happen automatically, and at the same time, you have to make sure that there is a team, and two people is a team. One person is not. Three people is also a team, and if there is nothing wrong in friends getting together to do things, but once they begin doing a business together, they have to stop being friends. Because they can continue being friends, but their behavior towards the business and towards each other also cannot be that of friends, because a lot of the times the friendship can come in the way. So to give you an example, Sunil and I, we were high school classmates, right? We shared the same desk since the 7th grade in Mumbai. And until we started in 2003, we were and are still the closest of friends. But when we began GS Lab, we explicitly talked about it and said, look, now that we are getting into a business together, friendship is only as the basis of trust. It's not how we behave. We have to behave like business partners. And to all the others who work with us, either as colleagues or as customers, partners, what have you, we must look like business partners, not friends. And so Sunil used to always come and live with me whenever he came to Pune. But once we began GS Lab, we said, okay, you will live in a hotel, not with me, because people can't see that there is a back channel between Sunil and Sridhar, which is not visible to us. That's one of the key things we did, and we did that because we had the experience. So for all of you young guys, keep that in mind. It's good to do business with friends, but then stop being friends. Be business partners from that point on.
Yeah. Right. And did that like then also drive do you see the culture within the organization also like get impacted if the founders are seem to be too close together and is that
well, the culture is impacted because of things that people do and allow others to do. Founders being close to each other doesn't impact the culture. In fact, it gives people confidence that this is a good founding team. Okay, but if suppose three friends get together and they are say co-founders of the company, and the fourth person is brought into the company as a senior person. If that person feels that, hey, I can never penetrate the inner circle of the company, then that's going to make them very uncomfortable. So then it's the responsibility of these three guys who set up the company to make sure that the fourth person and the fifth person and so on, they feel very comfortable becoming a part of the team. And they have to shoulder that responsibility. They cannot consciously or unconsciously send out signals which make the others uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. So before I move on, like I said, guys, please do feel free to ask questions. If you have any, you can type it in. You can unmute yourself, ask. And, so, yeah. Oh, Ganesh, you have a question. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to continue what you said. Yeah, guys, this is an open discussion, not like a webinar. Yeah, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. The reason we have Sridhar here is to get experience from him if we really want to start our startup and something like that. So, yeah, Abhishek, Om, or some other guys who have joined. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah.
Please.
So actually,
I have a question.
yeah, sorry, Abhi, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, Om. I'll go first. My question is related to my own experience. So I had a startup, and that was with my best friend, and we ran it for 2.5 years. But then initially, the idea that we thought of was game development studio, but that didn't work out quite well. We went into that for like full time, and we left our jobs and everything. We had some seed money. Other we get through loans, but we did run it for 2.5 years. But then and after 1 year, we found out that the idea that we were initially working on, that was not working really well. It's not gonna give us good revenue. So we changed gears and got into education. That was a good idea, but then we ran out of money and energy and motivation at that time. So that was something that I thought that if we had, let's say, we had like Plan B or something, that would have been worked well. So my question is around that, that how can we have our own. So for example, there may be the idea that we have, it may not work well. So how do we prepare for that? And if we for example, how do we prepare for the situation when we run out of money and uh, like we have idea but we don't have money anymore, or should we start something with like full time first, or should we go with like having a full time job then do something on weekends? So how, what is your take on this? So there are like multiple questions.
Yeah, it's a pretty complex question that you asked. But let me take it from the one sentence you said. How do you prepare to face a situation when there is no money?
Yeah.
Well, the simple answer to that is, as a business, you have to make sure that you don't run out of money. I mean, that's just responsibility for you as people who start the business. And it's possible that you do run out of money, in which case you shut the business and there is no problem with that, right? The big point to keep in mind is, why do you run out of money, right? You run out of money because you spend on the wrong idea without getting it validated, or you spend too much on things that you hope will work, or you just don't raise enough money. You make a poor estimate of how much money you are going to need. So fortunately or unfortunately, my experience has been such that all companies that I worked with always made sure they lived within their own means, which meant that at no point we undertook an expense that would put us in a situation where we were out of money. And that was just the fiscal discipline that we followed in all companies. And there's a way to do that for every business. It just makes you take on compromises that maybe mentally you or your family or your founder colleagues are not prepared to take on. And then, you have all kinds of frictions. So it's very important for you to decide, if you get together with some founders to set up a company, what will you spend on, for what purpose, is the idea really worth spending on, do we put in our own money or do we raise the money, and what do we do until then? So these are very hard questions. And I would say there is no formula for it, okay, because everybody's capacity to withhold is different.
Right.
And it's also different when you come together as a group. And Uh, so it's a question that every person, every team has to answer for themselves. It's like no different from running a family. You know, the formula I have used for running my family through tough times would apply to your family. And that same thing goes with companies too. So what really helps though is honest talk and not denying the reality, and that really helps a lot. So as long as you follow those principles, you would not face this situation.
Right. Yeah. So, Sridhar, on that topic of fiscal discipline, so to speak, right? So we had a speaker previously, and he was kind of suggesting not just like cost control, but like letting go of some stuff that might, in the short term, get you some revenue, but maybe not something that you can then keep sustaining in the long run, right? So maybe like a 6 month long 100 people project, right? And suddenly then what do you do with the 100 people? So is that also like conversations that you need to be constantly like, what is your view on expanding? I would say not just like being physically conservative, but like in terms of expansion and uh, you know uh, how do you let go, right? I mean,
Well, Atul, I think you are presupposing that this business is a services business, right? And you mentioned,
so the person who spoke about actually is a product. He's actually making designs for machines, and his point was that he didn't want to build any more capacity, which he didn't see ability to sustain after a year, right? So that was his point, and he kind of said that. I don't want to get into something where I have excess capacity, which I then have to service without revenue. So
yes.
it was not necessarily services in that sense.
Yeah, so this situation has a very simple solution, right? You develop supplier partners and execute through them. I would suggest that if you are setting up a company, you would never benefit from letting people go. It might seem like in the short run you are going to be able to reduce your cost, but there is a long term penalty you pay in terms of the signal you send elsewhere, the signal you send to your colleague to stay behind, your own thinking. So, as a company, even though it's a very young startup, I would always think that every employee we hire is going to be with us forever, helping the company grow and grow in the process. Unless you work with that confidence, your behavior with your colleagues and everyone else becomes less than satisfactory. But you always have a choice to not hire. You can get partners, you can be straight with your quote unquote colleague that, look, I can't make you an offer for you, or I'll make an offer for a year and we'll evaluate at that point.
Yeah.
So, what there is no alternative for is straight talk with whoever it is. What
Right.
I personally dislike in my colleagues as well as peers or customers, anyone I work with, is the lack of straight talk. And if I sense that, then I don't do business with them.
Right. So yeah, so I think you again touched upon the services and products distinction, and I think that was essentially the topic we started off with. Although
Yeah,
we were
I
into this,
I
so
actually wanted to come to that question when I
yeah,
get a chance. So
yeah,
yeah, Sridhar, I have a question on that. How do you differentiate? I mean, given you worked on both the sides, like product of the company as well as services, right? So how do you differentiate between? I mean, to help us understand how we can differentiate between the service-based company and the product company.
Okay. Well, I claim some experience in managing that. So here is my very distilled statement about the difference between product and services businesses, right? And my answer is going to be in terms of a financial viewpoint.
Okay.
So you have to look at a business as an investment risk reward equation, right? Every business needs some investment.
Mm-hmm.
Every business has some risk, and every business produces some reward.
Right.
Exactly like how individuals invest.
Right.
And when you have some spare chunk of cash and you want to invest somewhere, you do take into account, hey, how much am I investing, for what risk and what reward, right? So this portfolio approach is really important to consider when you think of comparing a services business with a product business. And the distinction is the following. Suppose you have only two levels, one high and the other low.
Okay.
Okay? So a product business is characterized by high investment, high risk, high reward.
Okay.
A services business is characterized by low risk, low investment, low risk, and low reward. Instead of saying low reward, I would say a fixed reward. That's the difference.
Okay. Okay.
And you draw a simple graph for yourself and look at how that portfolio approach applies to whatever product, whatever service you are developing. Because now there are combinations of the two. Your tower under reward may not be very high, but it may not be very low either.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe somewhere in between.
Right. Right.
Right?
Right.
The goal is always to minimize your investment, minimize the risk, and maximize your reward.
Right.
But then there are various parameters you have to play with. But I would never think about a business as, hey, this is a services business or this is a products business. Because services need to be productized to scale, and products need to have a services angle to produce predictability in revenue. So they are two sides of one coin. I think a lot of people make that mistake of thinking, hey, either I will live a product business life or I will lead services business life. I think it's a very narrow thinking. You have to have a financial portfolio approach and balance investment risk and reward.
Right. Right. Yeah, that definitely answers my question. And like you said, I definitely had an idea like there are completely two distinguished things like a product company and the service company. But yeah, I now realized after your mentioning that, yeah, those are the two sides of the same coin. Yep. Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Atul, I think you're on
Atul.
mute.
Yeah.
Atul, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. So I was just saying that I think Sarang has a question which is maybe more foundational to this, and he's asking like, what should one avoid in entrepreneurship? So I don't know if you want to take that broader question of three things to avoid.
Well, can you elaborate on your question, because that's a very, very broad question. I may just go on rambling if I just take that as question. What should one avoid?
Okay, let me reframe that. Then maybe like I don't know, two things that you would have done differently.
Right. Yes. Okay. So point number one, right? Entrepreneurship is never a solo journey. For good success, you always need a good team. And so one of the basic principles is to get to work with good people. And that's far more difficult than it sounds, because how do you define a good person to do business with? There are so many different factors that come in. And the person also changes as time goes by. So it really comes down to how do you select the people, or how do you choose to work with people whose values won't change with time, but at the same time, their behavior can change with time in a constructive way. So that's one thing I've been very careful about that, and thankfully, I have always been able to work with very good people, and all relationships are very long term. So this particular ability to identify and work with good people doesn't happen overnight. It happens from the beginning, and it also doesn't happen through a plan. It happens through a continuous behavior that you yourself have to exhibit. And that behavior is, first of all, you have to keep growing your network. Keep in mind that trust begets trust. You have to give before you take. All of these things apply, and they have to apply throughout your life, because every person carries a reputation. Whether they want it or not, it's always behind them. It's, when they talk to someone, the other person is not only looking at the person, but there is that background of the person's reputation. And it doesn't get built in a short time. It's in fact main asset a person carries. So I would say that if there is one thing that one must do is to build a good network, and to build a good network, be good to the network you build, and then your network kind of propagates to becoming a good network. So there is a lot of sacrifice, there is a lot of proactive action required. I'm happy to see that happy to help is an indication of that, right? You have set this up only to be good, right? With no motivation to gain something out of it in the short term. Eventually it will come. So that's one point I want to make about preparation towards becoming an entrepreneur. And the other preparation I would say is that you always have to set a goal which will be a lifetime goal. If it's a short-term goal, if it says I'm going to get done with this in 4 years, then I don't know what it really means, because it's not just good enough for me, at least, that in 4 years I would do something and move on. You have to set lifetime goals, and that means they have to be worthy of a lifetime work towards them. They have to look big, they have to stand the test of time, they have to keep you motivated throughout. So I would say keep those two things with you. May sound like very tall goals, but I'm sharing what worked for me.
Yeah. In fact, I think like the second one, right? And just trying to tie it up with our, the theme for like people with product ideas and like specific problems they know that they want to solve. Maybe that is driving, and you have that. But saves but a lot of people do start pure services. Companies where they have a customer and they start some work there, and then they build a revenue line and then kind of expand, right? So how do you go about setting some sort of a vision, or like you said, like a goal, right, in terms of if you are into that space where you are kind of working for somebody's idea rather than in a, so to speak, right, rather than maybe working on an idea that's yours and you are passionate about as a company, obviously, and as a founder.
Yes. So I'll tell you what, it will vary from a person to person, and also from the time in the nation's life or the economy's life or whatever, or in the world economy's life. Because there is no formula to this. There are a couple of things I would like to say though. One of them is that, nobody becomes an entrepreneur because they say, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur. Okay? I really don't know what it would mean if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur. It would be an incomplete sentence to me. What would make sense though is, I want to offer something to the world And I see that the best way of doing that is to, set up a company and then offer it, right? So what comes first is your desire to offer something. And then becoming an entrepreneur is a means to do that.
Right. Right.
And that's very important. It's important to figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, in my case, what I would say is that when I was a prof, right, and I was prof by choice, and the nature of the choice, we can keep it for the session. But when I became a prof, there was one goal that I had for my next stage. And the next stage was to build a successful product business from India for the world. This was back in early 1990. It was that ambiguous a statement that I had. And I didn't know how to go about doing it, but it just seemed like a worthy idea to pursue that, I would go back to India and I would build a product business for the rest of the world from there.
Right.
I don't know what made me think of that. There were several factors. But guess what? After returning, after 25 years, I'm still working on it. It was a tall enough goal that it's still keeping me motivated. And it makes sense still. In the process, several things have happened. Other people think I have achieved several goals and I continue to work. But for me as a person, I'm still working on the goal with which I began. And at that time, I didn't say, hey, I have quote unquote this idea that I did, of course, have that. But that was not the end in itself. The end was that I would set up product business coming from here. And in the process, I have learned that a product business is not just a product business. It's a business based on some intellectual property. It may be a service business. It may be a product business. But it's got to be based on, quote unquote, your own intellectual property.
Right.
Sir,
So again, just to kind of diversify that thought, right? So like somebody once said that like an idea should be great only in its implementation, so to speak, right? Like if you don't have that specific IP that you have, right? I mean, in a very differentiated way, but you have this thing which is driving you to solve something better or something to that effect, right? And people do set up products which are already existing and then do something slightly better. I would like you to maybe talk about like how hard is it from India to kind of brand it into a global situation and to be able to get into that space, right? Where it's like how do you kind of still become a product and not just a technology idea, so to speak, right? So is it like from India perspective, is it easier, harder, or do you need to be in US to pull this off? What's the thought?
Yeah, before I answer, can you explain to me what you meant by product and not technology?
So take something like Salesforce.com, right? It's not an IP per se, but it's a product. And when I say Salesforce.com, you think CRM or like Siebel for at some point of time, right? It was a product. But there was SAP, there was Oracle, right? So like I could go and make a ERP or a CRM solution, but then there is that entire gamut of getting it into market and telling people that don't buy Salesforce.com, buy me, right? Not that I have a specific IP that does like a small thing better, right? I just overall do different things, right? Maybe I manage payroll better, right? So, but how do I differentiate? How do I brand? And like the question really is, from India, is it harder to do, or like that aspect of the business?
Okay. So first of all, I would say that intellectual property does not necessarily mean technology. Okay. Salesforce definitely exhibited a huge intellectual property in doing things differently. It's the first B2B application that went to the cloud. That was intellectual property, right? Although CRMs existed, and in that sense they didn't do anything new. Intellectual property can also be about the business aspect of an offering. It doesn't have to be necessarily in the engineering or technology side.
Right.
So let's keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And, two companies with identical offerings can also have completely different approaches to the market, which again is their intellectual property. They could have innovative pricing, that could be their intellectual property. So if you broaden your definition of what intellectual property is, then we get to the second part of your question, which is something possible from India or not? I find that question a little silly to answer now, these days. If you ask that question when we returned to India in 95, it would make sense. But now it should be a foregone conclusion that you can do anything from anywhere, any part of the world. It's just you have to bring the right ingredients to compete in the market that you decide to participate in. And you may fall short on that because your market understanding falls short. But there is no supply situation there anymore.
So what you're saying is that from a supply situation, you're saying like the ability to make something out of India exists. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there is nothing that you need to become successful in Timbuktu that you can't bring to market from India.
Okay.
Okay? There is one reality that you have to recognize as a business. Depending on your offering, your customer may want to be close to you as people. And then you will have to solve that problem. Okay? There may be regulatory environments that may require you to incorporate in that country. But those are issues related to running the business. There is nothing fundamental about them.
Right.
Hello, can I ask something?
Yeah.
Sure, Sharon.
Sure,
Hello,
please go
sir.
ahead.
Yeah. Hello, sir. So, what do you observe while looking at the situation or any aspect or while taking any decision in the holistic view? So, is this holistic view every time is important to look into, and how you prioritize while making that decision?
So, which decision are you talking about? Is that Sharang?
Actually, decisions in every sector or every aspect or every segment of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Just an overview, like how you observe the things.
It's a fairly abstract question.
Yeah.
It might fetch an abstract answer unless you want to make it specific.
Yeah, Sharon, do you have like an example of what you're asking, or maybe some detail on what, like an example maybe would help, I think, a situation.
So let me try to explain. While we see the things holistically, we have to actually look for a lot of things. So how can one prioritize these?
Again.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope you got the idea. What I'm telling.
It is a very high.
Are you talking about, let me try to get what you are asking.
Yeah.
Let's say you are working somewhere, how do you decide whether I should quit now and start? Or, you have quit and you have started and you need to decide, should I go to a
Alright,
customer or not? Should I stop my product development or not?
All right, so let me explain you my current situation. I am a student in SPPU Pune University. So I am also working on my idea, but the as in student, I'm in third year right now, so it is very difficult. Whether I should get a job, or I should pursue my entrepreneurial dream, or what. So while maintaining these two and their timings and everything, so it becomes difficult in much
Yeah.
way.
Okay, that makes very concrete.
Yeah.
Okay, so my first suggestion to you would be, notwithstanding the sexy wisdom that we see in the literature, business literature, that college dropouts make great entrepreneurs with some really
Yeah.
good examples. I would say finish your degree. Okay?
Mhm.
Unless you see so much money flowing your way and you already see the ability to convert it, I would definitely say go complete your education. Because the number of examples I've seen where the opportunity to miss, the opportunity to complete was missed and then it was regretted forever, right? So you evaluate your idea. One of the things that you will find very common amongst all entrepreneurs who eventually build a successful business is that at no point do they live in the dream world. Okay? They are always very grounded to the realities of their customers, their business, the amount of money they have. It's very real, and they're able to solve the problems in the real world. There is no romanticism about it. That if I do this, that will happen, and if that happens, something else will happen. So it's not there. It's very concrete, grounded decision making. And for your situation, you will be able to decide that. You know. So avoid any kind of romanticism. Avoid any kind of hope and pray approach. You know what I mean. I'm hoping and I'm praying that it will work out. It never does. So you apply that principle, you will get your answer about whether you should realize your dream of entrepreneurship or whether you should complete your degree. The second point I have to make here is if you are the type who is able to recognize what value to offer people, to customers for money, then you will get one idea today, you will get two tomorrow, and you will get four the next time. There will never be a shortage of ideas for you because you are like that.
Yeah.
What will be missing is to stay on one idea and execute it to fruition.
Yes.
Give yourself a chance to do that. And that requires some preparation. Put in the preparation.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you.
So, an example I would give myself from my own life is when I returned to India, I was doing my assistant professorship at the university in such a way that I was preparing to return to India. And I did that for a few years. Because without preparation, nobody can win. Every game needs practice and preparation.
Right.
And it may not be visible, but it is there. So you ask yourself, have you prepared?
Yes.
Okay. I hope that answered your question.
Yes. Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, sir, like I have a question. I have been trying entrepreneurship, not I would say full time always. I have lost my job many times, and I was sitting at home frustrated that no, I should get onto a job and be stable there. But whenever I get an opportunity again, my heart says, no, I want to do that. I want to go back and do the entrepreneurship. I don't know. I mean, it is in my heart. This is something I want to do. So this is on behalf of every young entrepreneur. At one hand, I have some financial liability which I have to be liable for. So I need to make money no matter whether I'm able to pursue my dream or not. And other hand, I'm not able to lead a stable life because the kind of uh, option I'm choosing for an entrepreneurship, a lot many time it does not work out. Whether I also tried for product, I tried for service based, so like I tried for a banking transformation service based company. So we kind of set up our thing in USA, in Dubai, and we kind of tried to set up a development center in Pune, some sort of stuff we tried. I tried to work with one person on a product idea. Again, I'm back to a journey wherein actually we are working for one of the client. We got one deal and we started our journey again, some sort of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you make that decision that okay, this is the right one and you have to stick to that? I know there is no, again, you would say that there is no formula or protocol to it, but like how you evaluate I mean whether to
Yeah.
if you once you have a high paying job and at the same time once you have a liability, it's a very hard decision to quit your job and get into a journey which you're not sure of. You don't know whether it will work out or not. So how do you evaluate and yeah.
Yeah. So, it's a good question, and I see that a lot of young people face that question. Okay? And it also happens because at a very young age, people get very high paying jobs. And so there is a clear trade off that, look, you become an entrepreneur and everything is uncertain. As against that, with the same skills, you can get a job and you get a fat paycheck and things look good. But somehow that leaves you dissatisfied. So you get back, right? Have I characterized your problem?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Right? So let's keep some things in mind. Let's go back to what I said. There is no romanticism about entrepreneurship. No, it's a hard way of life. And you would take that up only if it looks worth it to you. And you never take it up to become rich. You never take it up to get name and fame. You take it up because you feel strongly about creating an offering in the world and you're prepared to go out on your own to prepare that. Right? It is as simple as that. Once again, I would say nobody becomes an entrepreneur because they don't want to work for somebody. When you are an entrepreneur, you work for everybody else but yourself. So keep that in mind. Right? You even work for your employees, you work for everyone. So you have to keep in mind that what comes first is the offering you want to bring to the market. If you don't have that, then there is no point in becoming an entrepreneur. Why would you want to become an entrepreneur? Right? For example, you could very well say that, look, my idea is best executed at the company where I'm working. It's completely new. But I think if I think about it, it's best executed where I work instead of going out. Might as well do that. You become a great intrapreneur. And eventually you can become an entrepreneur. Right? So, be more loyal to bringing out something of value to the market and gain that experience rather than doing it on your own. Because there are many pitfalls that come to you when you decide to do that on your own. The second point to keep in mind is that when you try to become a business, right, you have to think about somebody buying what you've got. Right? So without a customer, there is no business. So when someone becomes a customer, they have to buy something from you. Correct? And think about the basic behavior people exhibit. I buy from friends or experts or market leaders. One of those three. I buy from a friend because there is a trust and the friend wishes well for me. I buy from an expert because there is a trust that this person knows what he's doing and he would give an offering which is likely to be the best. Or I buy from a market leader because somebody has made these guys market leaders because what they do is great and so I buy. So when you want to become a business, you go in these stages. Initially, you sell to your friends and you exhaust your friends. And so you stand up there as an expert and your network increases and your influence or your market grows. And the ultimate stage is that you are a market leader and therefore the whole world buys you. Now, how do you go from friends to experts to market leader? That's the evolution of your business. And then you need preparation, right? You need to have people who would buy from you. You would need to have expertise so that others would think, hey, this guy is an expert, I would buy from him. And then the two would eventually lead to you becoming a market leader. So this should help you answer your question about whatever offering you're bringing to market, how you would sell it and what preparation you need to sell it. And there is no formula for it. You got to figure that out for yourself. So, one of the hallmarks of becoming a successful entrepreneur is to be able to solve your own problems, right? You go by basic guidelines and then apply them to what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. It makes sense. It does. One last question I have is, lot many people who are well-wisher and quite senior to me, they say that you should just focus on entrepreneurship. Why you are doing both, like this happy to help initiative wherein you want to give back something to the society, and this entrepreneurship which also needs 100%, like dealing with HR, operation, engineering team, client, and so on. And at the same time, kind of try to put my best to keep this initiative going. But lot many people who are quite elder to me and quite experienced, they say that this thing usually people do after they get retired, or after then they start something wherein they try to give back to the society. But somewhere I kind of don't agree. So just wanted to understand your thought on this.
No, I think I must commend you guys on doing this and doing it at the stage you are in, because you don't start giving back when you have taken all your life. You give back and you take. In fact, you give first and then you take. I referred to that earlier, right? So every entrepreneur must be involved into some community service. I have followed that throughout, and I have seen almost all the people I know have followed that. They either work for their local chapter of something, they would work for a user group, they would work for their alumni group, they would work for a certain exhibition, and they would do that without expecting anything in return. Because, keep in mind, those who are from the farming community or have exposure to that would agree that you cannot till the soil all the time. It will become infertile after some time. You have to put something in it. So you are taking from the community as an entrepreneur, and you have to keep giving back to the community so that there is something for you to take back. Right? So an initiative of young people like yourselves to help out other young people is a fabulous initiative. I would do whatever is required to help it. And it's very important that you do it even as you learn, even as you figure out how to do your own business. You don't always have to have, Buzurg log coming and telling you do it this way, do it that way. In my life, I did something like this. It has to be done as you learn. So more power to you guys doing this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I got my answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sridhar. Yeah.
Thank
So Atul, you want to take over? Yeah, please.
No, I think we are at the top of the hour. So if anybody
Right,
has
right,
any
yeah.
finishing questions, like we
I have
can.
one question.
Yeah, Vinod.
Audible?
Yes,
Yeah.
Vinod, you are.
I have this one question. Like, there are many ways to attract angel investors, but how to, best attract the best or the suitable angel investors, and how to partner with those angel investors is my question.
The audio wasn't very clear. Can someone repeat this question?
So Sridhar, he's asking about getting somebody to invest in your business. And like, how do you find good angel investors? What do you look for an investor? I think things around
Yes.
that is what he's asking.
Yeah, it's a very important question. I think there are two or three things to keep in mind. When somebody invests in you at that earlier stage, they are investing in the people. Okay, so make sure there is a team. Okay. The second thing they look for is your approach. Approach to how you go about developing your idea. Are you a strong validator? Do you take things for granted? So that needs to also be exhibited. And then the third thing would be your overall vision, right? This is the motherhood, apple pie, and blue sky type of pitch that you make. So those three things are important. And then the last thing is, you don't raise money because someone is willing to give it. Because for any money that you get, there is a price to be paid. You want to make sure you take money from the right people and always take it on your terms. Although you are the needy party, you still have to take it on your terms. Because you are the one who's going to convert that into some return. First for the investor and then for yourself. So keep that in mind. And then go about raising the money. The entrepreneur's confidence about being able to raise money is very important, and you will have that confidence only when you're not exhibiting desperation.
Right.
Very good point. Thanks.
Okay.
Any
Okay.
other questions? Otherwise, I think we're already slightly over time, but maybe one more question if anybody has.
If
Okay.
not, then I will
I guess
request, sir, any piece of advice you will have for people like me, I mean, who are not that experienced, something last piece of advice for us.
Well, I would say you have age on your hands. The internet has flattened everything. Just be very, very selective about the choices you make. Like I said, don't be in a denial on anything. Question yourself hard. That is the hardest thing to do in life. That you start drinking your own Kool-Aid very quickly. I still have problems with that. It is the hardest thing to do to be honest to yourself. Okay, and keep working with good people. I think if you are in a good company, you will become successful. Most of the challenges of early stage startups are problems within the team. Avoid them and stick together. Commit to a cause. High level advice, but those are the hardest things to do.
right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of then rounds it up and brings us to the end of this session. So, just a bit of plug here. I have sent out all the social media links we have. If you guys follow on any of them, then whatever webinars we do next Saturday and the Saturday after that, you will keep getting some notifications there. We don't push any emails out, so it'll be good if you guys follow us in one of these. Or we are also on Meetup, so if you're signed up there, then please follow us there. The video and the video for this one, right? So that will be on YouTube on our channel maybe in a couple of days. And there is also a feedback link which you will not see after you log off. So if you guys can just maybe click on that, there's just like 2 or 3 questions, all multiple choice. So if you answer that, that kind of helps us get some data on what you guys want to see in the future, and what's of interest, what didn't go well, what went well. So that'd be great. Yeah, I think Sridhar, thanks a lot for joining and spending this hour with us. I think it was quite enlightening and quite a I think quite a fun session to for me at least personally. It was quite a fun session to talk to you and meet you. So thanks a lot. Thanks a
Sure.
lot.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Okay.
so much, Sri.
Bye now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.